Right, it is time for another Drawing in the Dark. Today, I've got a pretty cool design, Baxter Stockman from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and we are just going to get right into it. I'm going to start off, as I usually do, working out some basic shapes, thinking about a pose, composing the structure of it. I've already done some study work and everything, so I'm pretty familiar, actually, at this point now with how Baxter Stockman's body works. So putting out all of these different elements, these different shapes, making a few adjustments as I need. Also notice that I'm drawing pretty lightly with this pen here at first. I am using a ballpoint pen. It shows up a little bit better in the video than pencil does. And as for drawing exercises and stuff, it really makes a big difference as far as how deliberate you have to be with the pen and your pen strokes and stuff. It does really kind of zero in on choices. It's still correctable, and I still will make adjustments and corrections. But as far as like for drawing exercises and stuff, I think that it's pretty valuable. So then, we're gonna zoom in here a little bit into a couple of regions where I'm directly working, and as you can see, I'm building up some of the more refined lines, making some more concrete decisions, and refining a lot of the elements and stuff as I go through this, and just kind of like solidify what I'm working through here as far as the details go. So I did pull up some reference and stuff for Baxter, and I used a lot of this reference mostly for the other sketches on the left-hand page and stuff, and you'll see a little bit of those as you go. If you want to watch the video where I draw those sketches and I do that study work and everything, that's on the Patreon page. I use that reference just a little bit here to really get an idea of Baxter's anatomy. I wanted to go with a more traditional version of Baxter. There's a lot of interpretations of this character over the years. This character has existed for nearly 30 years. I did like a lot of key elements and stuff. The really big bug-eyed fly eyes and stuff. I mean, that's probably the most characteristic element of him. But then there were other elements and stuff. I did want to make sure that he still looked like a mutated human and not just like a giant fly. So, sticking with the normal human upper arms, the second set of arms are bug arms. His leg proportions are pretty much the same as like a human leg proportions, but I made him, more like bug anatomy and stuff. One of the things here with going through the process of drawing this, and I'm doing a little bit of real-time action with doing these eyes here. So just to show kind of how slow and deliberate and careful I'm trying to be with getting these. I didn't want the eyes to be too messy at first necessarily, even though this is still a sketch. I'm not worried about any fine rendering. I'm not worried about perfect line position. This is still something that, with the finished drawing, if it was something that I was, say, preparing for a tattoo or a final illustration sort of thing that'll be like colored and whatnot, then there would be a few more stages, at least one more stage of basically like inked line work that would go after this. I would consider this stage in comic book terms as still like penciling, even though I'm doing it with a pen. This is still more of like the penciling kind of stage. Going into the roughs, then you go into the penciling. The stage after this kind of drawing then would be the inking, where you really just, you're not focused on anything about the image itself as much as you are focused about the actual lines and stuff. So getting every line to have its quality and its intention behind it and stuff. That's really what the job of inking is to do. Build contrast, focus on the lines. The penciling is more about the anatomy, the form, the poses, the composition, and everything. And then moving even back further than that, the roughs are really about the composition. And then with comic books and stuff, a lot of that should even be mostly figured out, at the storyboard stage. So that when you get to a page and you have your storyboards that kind of show you where Baxter Stockman should fit in the panel, and generally what his action is, and then in the rough stage, you figure out the actual composition of that. The penciling stage, you refine that, work out the anatomy and the details, and then in the inking stage. Then you just focus on the quality of the line work itself. And then from there, you get into the coloring. And then pretty much, after that, you're going into lettering. So the artwork is essentially done. Yeah, back to the drawing, I guess. I work out a lot of different elements and stuff here. And I am trying to bring a little bit of extra attention as I go through different parts of it. I'm working out a bit of basic volumetric shading and stuff, just trying to make things stand out, build up some contrast. This isn't necessarily a piece that I have any plans to do anything else with after this video, so I am taking it up to a certain stage that's a little bit beyond like normal penciling, but not quite to the point of where I would say that it's like a finished, refined piece. Because from there, you're going to want to drop out a lot of your construction lines, clean things up, make sure that you don't have anything poking out and stuff. And then even do a little bit more nitpicky kind of refinements and stuff to certain aspects of the anatomy. Say like fixing these busted hands. I hope that anybody that's come back to watch these videos, that's watched some of my earlier ones and stuff, I have been evolving, I have been changing what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, how I'm putting it together, the editing and stuff, how much of the stuff that I'm putting in the front end of these videos and on the back end of these videos. I've cut a lot of that out, doing a lot more of kind of like interest-based editing and stuff that's still focused on the subject, cutting out all those little commentary words and everything that were kind of like distracting and stuff, and just trying to get a little bit better on my delivery on these. One of the things that I have always especially liked to do is draw and talk. Unfortunately, with these, I have to do voiceovers and stuff just because of the nature of how I'm producing them, and you'll even see with like the daylight creeping up onto my page and stuff, and then we're going to cut away, and then it's a completely different, lighting situation. And a lot of that is because I have to start and stop these drawing videos many times throughout the course of the day, or at least the course of the drawing. I've only had a couple of these drawings that have actually taken more than like one day as far as like the sit downs and stuff to get it all drawn in. But but as I was saying though, one of the things I really like to do is talk and draw. A lot of my tattooing involves some pretty heavy and involved conversation with my clients as I'm working with them. I really I might be a little introverted, but I also really do like to talk to people, and especially if it's about like the right things, existentialism, philosophical stuff, different world events and everything that happen, especially like if they're scientific or space-based. Big fan of Star Trek, outer space stuff. Baxter Stockman was an interesting choice, though, I think, for me. One of the big things is that I wanted to do a character that was kind of horrific, but at the same time do something that was like classic pop culture as well, but also a little bit on the obscure side. So with, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles character, he's one of the classics from the old comic and stuff. He was also a pretty major character in the original cartoon, and even made an appearance in Ronin. But as you can see here, I'm just doing some basic shading and stuff to a point with these kinds of drawings. I do want to talk more about how they're produced and what I'm doing, especially early on, those early stages. But honestly, once you start getting to a point like this, a lot of this is just like refinement. You can see that I'll thicken up outer contour lines and stuff. The reason why I would do that is to help separate different elements from the other elements around it, to help prevent like visual tangents and stuff, where lines from one element run into the lines of another element and kind of like merge the elements together. And by elements, I mean like, his head is an element, each individual wing is an element, each individual arm is an element. This, weird background, hatchy stuff that I'm doing here is also an element. And one of the things I wanted to talk about specifically was this cross hatching, and to show, that there's a lot of different ways of cross-hatching and, building up like textural qualities and stuff with this cross-hatching. And so I use it for a lot of basic purposes, especially just with like doing a ballpoint pen. There's only so many real options that you have with shading. You can get really, really slow and careful with it and blend out these perfect gradations and blends and stuff. Or as I like to like move through the piece in a kind of active way, something like this where, it moves fairly quickly. And I'll even do, some real time here. This isn't, this portion here isn't sped up at all, just to really show how fast I'm actually moving, and these line decisions and stuff and how they come about. A lot of it is, is just scratching stuff out here and then building up a textural pattern that looks scratchy, but also functions and communicates well for the purposes of the piece. I guess what I wanted was kind of like a smoky kind of background. I didn't want to do anything crazy, but I ended up putting a good amount of time into doing this hatchy stuff. It took quite a bit longer than I thought it did, actually. And that's a real thing too with a lot of drawing, is some of this stuff is going to take you a lot longer than you think it does, even if you're trying to speed things up, work quickly, take shortcuts, stuff like that. And so often it's not even necessarily worth it, especially when, artwork is almost like this weird container of time. If you could imagine, any piece of artwork as like a jar, and you're putting all of this focused, refined, creative time into that jar, and then that jar is the artwork. And so in a way, and you can't really, I mean, I guess you could destroy the artwork in some way, but other than that, that jar will retain that artwork, the paper, the whatever medium, you're putting your work on, the canvas, the MP3 file, whatever, is going to hold that time, that effort that you put into it, and keeps it and maintains it in a way that a lot of things don't, like the dishes always need to be done. But that drawing, once you've drawn it, doesn't have to be redrawn again today, hopefully, and it's a pretty rare case that it would need to be. And you definitely wouldn't have to do it every day. And so for me, there's something really interesting about that and powerful about that I can put all this time, create this drawing, and then it really ends up having like a permanence to it. And something that kind of like adds to a continuity of reality in a weird way. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of the stuff that I like to talk about when I'm drawing. So as I work my way through this piece and darken everything up, this is really, towards the end of the phase of the drawing, where finally, I'm going into quite a bit more pressure with the pen, darkening up lines, bringing background elements and stuff, and elements I've just kind of been inching along and stuff, doing different layers, getting a little bit darker here, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit darker there. Now I'm, and with the background elements and stuff, just trying to build up and hatch in these elements to help reinforce some contrast, create some atmosphere, and just generally make sure that the piece seems kind of finished for the purposes of these videos and stuff. So yeah, as I just go through here and slowly, work up the speed of the video, just refine things, thicken up lines. At this point here, I'm really focused on the overall aspects of the piece, taking it a little bit of a step back, looking at it overall, not worried so much about particular individual details, but looking at the piece as a whole, making sure like, oh, does this stand out enough? Does this separate enough? Do I need to build up a certain amount of shading so that I can create a little bit better contrast and a distinction between the elements? And then that's pretty much it. Just a bit of refining, a bit of finishing up. Especially, I wouldn't normally go to this level with a pencil piece. I would save a lot of this for actual inking. It isn't really ever going to get inked. It's going to be left as is here once we're done. I do just want to kind of build it up to a more finished level and relative to the piece itself. So that's just pretty much the goal here, getting it to that last presentable point. And then from there, if you want to check out some of our stuff, check out the Patreon page, patreon.com/mop-and-bucket. And we have a bunch of merch on our jademonkey.net store. And we also have some stuff on Amazon, some art books and everything. Go ahead and go check those out. And yeah, we'll check you out later.